Holger Rune never intended to say it, but once he said it, there was no going back. He asked her a straightforward inquiry about other Claires during a casual interview before mentioning her name. Eala Alex. The tennis world saw everything in the way he paused and moved his gaze, and what transpired next would transform a private admiration into the most talked-about revelation in the sport. Some players in the realm of professional tennis bring more to the court than just their own aspirations. They represent the aspirations of entire countries. For Denmark, Holger Rune, the Danish sensation with a fiery temperament and powerful backhand, had become just that. He had already broken into the top 10, defeated several Grand Slam winners, and became one of the ATP's most promising young players at the age of just 21. His ascent was not only swift, but also essential. Rune carried that burden like armor. Denmark had not seen a tennis star of this kind in decades. Another teenage tennis player was going through her own version of pressure-filled stardom on the WTA circuit. As the first Filipino to win a Grand Slam title at any level after capturing the U, Alex Eala, the trailblazing Filipino tennis player, became more than just a symbol for her nation's Open Girls Singles Championship, the first player to enter the WTA Top 200 and later the Top 150. Her goal in every match was to demonstrate that a country of more than 110 million people deserved to compete at the highest levels of tennis, not simply for rankings or cash. At combined ATP/WTA events, their paths had occasionally crossed. Contrary to popular belief, the professional tennis circuit is quite modest. Future Hall of Famers sit next to aspiring qualifiers in the same hotels, practice facilities, and player lounges. Although their circles overlapped, Rune and Eala were never fully in the same spotlight. He was the erratic genius vying for titles in the Masters 1000. As she worked her way up the main tour and through WTA 125 tournaments, she was the resolute barrier breaker. However, this is what made their interaction intriguing. In various settings, they embodied the same archetype. Both were carrying national expectations that would crush athletes of lower caliber. Both were navigating the perilous waters of living up to early promise after achieving breakthrough success at an early age. Both had the uncommon blend of mental toughness and technical skill that distinguishes the good from the possibly great. And both recognized the special loneliness of being your nation's only representative at the top level of an individual sport, whether they acknowledged it out loud or not. Despite its global reach, the tennis community is close-knit. Players take note of one another. In locker rooms, they watch each other's games. Fitness trainers and practice courts are shared. They comprehend exactly what the person on the other side of the locker room or the internet is going through in ways that outsiders could never comprehend. Thus, when young athletes accomplish something noteworthy, their classmates notice. Other young players on the circuit witnessed Alex Eala's victories in pivotal matches or her innovations for Filipino tennis. And one of those players paying notice was Holger Rune, despite playing on a different circuit and being geographically and competitively separated. The amount of attention he had been giving was unknown. Not until that interview, not until his meticulously preserved professional facade gave way just enough to expose something sincere beneath. Because, just like in life, the most genuine stories are frequently revealed by the unplanned moments in tennis. What happens when it's difficult to conceal admiration? It was meant to be a standard press requirement. Holger Rune had conducted interviews of this type hundreds of times. A Masters 1000 events post-practice media session, where players provide well-rehearsed responses to questions posed by journalists. With the sound of tennis balls reverberating in the background, the scene was laid back in a shaded spot close to the practice courts. Seated comfortably in his practice gear, Rune appeared prepared to sail through another 15 minutes of normal tennis banter. The reporter began by asking him the standard questions about his preparation for the competition, his thoughts on his draw, and his recuperation from a minor ailment that prevented him from competing in the last event. Rune responded with the effortless ease of someone who had performed this dance countless times. He did feel fantastic. The knee was fine, yes. Indeed, he was excited about the challenge. Typical. Expert. Unforgettable. The question that altered everything then appeared. You've mentioned seeing other young players on tour before, Holger. Are there any up-and-coming female athletes whose games you watch or like, as the WTA side is also present this week? The purpose of the question was to pass the time and perhaps elicit a statement on the next generation of tennis players. The journalist most likely anticipated that Rune would bring up Coco Gauff or perhaps Mira Andreeva, the players who were already well-known and safe. However, Rune did not provide the obvious response. He hesitated. It wasn't the typical pause that athletes take to come up with a tactful answer. This was not like the others. Longer. His eyes shifted slightly to the left, which is how people's eyes move when they are retrieving real memories instead of reciting prepared talking points. Then he grinned, but it was a measured, professional smile, not the one he usually wears at press conferences. This was an uncontrollably ashamed smile. He said, "Alex Eala," which sounded softer than his earlier responses. "She's doing amazing things for Filipino tennis, in my opinion. It's truly amazing how hard she battles in every match and how she's had to qualify and advance through minor competitions to gain opportunities at the major tour level." Something caught the journalists' attention. The faint hint of inquiry in their voice could be heard in the follow-up query. "Do you monitor her outcomes?" One more pause. For a moment, the self-assured top 10 player appeared to be a 21-year-old who had just been questioned about a crush as Rune moved in his seat. "Yes, I believe that many of us do. Her game is quite comprehensive. You can't coach her exceptional movement or mental toughness, especially during close games. Either you have it or you don't. She possesses it." The singularity of this moment is what made it exceptional. Holger Rune wasn't making generic compliments. He wasn't using the platitudes that athletes use when they don't genuinely follow someone's profession, such "she's talented" or "she works hard." He was alluding to particular elements of Eala's style of play, her agility, and her ability to remain composed under duress. These weren't conclusions drawn from a single viral highlight. This was the analysis of a person who had watched several of her matches and paid enough attention to develop sincere technical judgments. Sensing they had come into something, the journalist moved forward. "Have you two ever discussed tennis or practiced together?" Rune's face changed once more. Now it was obvious to him that this line of inquiry had taken him in a different direction. "We've had a few conversations about player lounge topics during tournaments, but she's incredibly committed. I honor that." Subsequently, he included a statement that would be the most scrutinized on tennis social media for the following week. "I believe a lot of people will be surprised by her. She possesses all the necessary skills to place in the top 50, if not higher, and when she does, everyone will recognize her uniqueness. Not if, but when she does. That assurance, that precise forecast, that individual commitment to the future success of another player." The discussion went on for a few more minutes, going back to safer subjects like his tournament strategy and serve style. However, depending on your point of view, the harm, or the revelation, had already been done. The video was online in less than an hour. It was posted on Tennis Twitter, Tennis Instagram, and Tennis TikTok in less than 2 hours. Filipino tennis fans produced compilation videos titled "Holger Rune Respects Alex Eala," set to heartfelt music in just 3 hours. Within 6 hours, side-by-side pictures of Rune and Eala were being shared on tennis gossip accounts, with captions guessing on the true meaning of the images. Professional athletes are not supposed to do what Holger Rune had unintentionally done. Everyone in attendance felt that he had disclosed something sincere and intimate that went beyond mere professional deference. This was just the beginning of the internet's impending insanity. Detective work is what tennis fans are best at. Additionally, the tennis internet became something akin to a crime scene investigation unit when Holger Rune's interview was released. However, they were unraveling the enigma of Rune's true level of admiration for Alex Eala rather than solving murders. Twitter was where it all began. The interview clip was shared by a Filipino tennis fan account with the remark, "I see you, Holger," as Holger Rune grinned while discussing Alex Eala. The quotation tweets started coming in within minutes. He actually said, "When she does, not if she does, I'm screaming," pausing before uttering her name. Professional athletes don't discuss other players in this manner unless there is a deeper issue. However, the actual investigation started when someone chose to look into Rune's past social media posts. At that point, things became intriguing. A user discovered a practice shot that Alex Eala had shared during a training session in Spain 7 months prior. A straightforward fire emoji from Holger Rune's verified account was buried in the comments, 73 comments below. No one had noticed at the time. Eala had roughly 200,000 followers, whereas Rune had 800,000. One emoji may easily blend in with the background. No, though. It felt like proof now. A story that Eala had shared 5 months prior, celebrating her maiden WTA main draw triumph, was then discovered by someone. She tagged a couple sponsors as well as the competition. Holger Rune had seen it. The fan who found this had screenshot evidence from Eala's close friends list that had somehow leaked, even though Instagram doesn't openly display story views to everyone. Rune's account was displayed among the watchers in the screenshot. The detective job became more intense. An image from Indian Wells, one of the combined ATP WTA events, was found in the collection of a tennis photographer. Holger Rune and Alex Eala, who were both waiting for courts, appeared to be conversing in the backdrop of a practice court shot. They were giggling. 4 months had passed since the picture was shot. When it was first posted, it had about 40 likes. Now, it was being shared thousands of times with comments like, "Look at how he's looking at her and they've been talking." Tennis drama-covering YouTubers started making videos. One title was Why Alex Eala Has ATP Players' Attention. Another was Holger Rune's Secret Crush. These videos were pushed to 100 by the algorithm. Thousands upon thousands of tennis matches. Supporters who may not be familiar with either player. TikTok developed into its own speculative ecology. Using Rune's matches and Eala's matches, editors produced amorous montages set to popular songs about covert affection. Their playing techniques were contrasted in one film, which revealed unexpected parallels in their shot selection and court location, indicating that they may have talked about strategy. It received 2.3 million views. The Rune-Eala situation, everything we know, is a megathread that was started by the tennis community on Reddit. Every conversation, potential connection, and tournament where users were in the same city at the same time was compiled by the users. Someone found out that, while at different times, they had both had brief training at the Marataglu Academy years prior. Another person discovered an old interview in which Eala talked about honing her skills by training against male players. Was Rune one of them? Something completely fresh was happening in the Filipino tennis community. Through her accomplishments, Alex Eala had elevated their nation's tennis profile, but this was not like that. One of the biggest emerging stars in the ATP was openly praising her with a degree of warmth and clarity that felt intimate. What it signified was discussed on Filipino sports talk shows. In Manila, morning radio shows talked about it. Was no longer just tennis news, it was also news about relationships, entertainment, and national pride. However, not everyone was having fun. Some of Eala's admirers wondered why there was a tale at all. The A1 viral tweet stated, "She's an amazing player on her own. She is deserving of attention without a male player's approval." 15,000 people liked the tweet. It led to a parallel discussion on whether Eala's accomplishments were being undermined by the focus on Rune's remarks, which only made her noteworthy in the eyes of a guy. Danish supporters responded differently. The fact that their tennis hero displayed this human side was charming to some. Some were concerned that it was a diversion. One Danish tennis forum member suggested that Holger concentrate on his game rather than WTA players. This season has been uneven for him. The last thing he needs in the media is this. Professionals who cover tennis for major media agencies, known as tennis journalists, found themselves in a unique situation. Was this a true story? "I've covered tennis for 20 years, a reputable reporter tweeted. Players constantly look up to one another. However, I've honestly never heard a player speak about another quite like Rune did about Eala. That degree of specialized technical understanding coupled with that personal stake in her potential success. When someone learned that Rune and Eala were both registered for a combination event that would take place in 2 weeks, the rumors intensified. The most eagerly awaited storyline on the tennis internet was the prospect of them attending the same tournament, possibly interviewing each other, and possibly being pictured together. However, no one anticipated the impending outrage. For every individual applauding Holger Rune's remarks regarding Alex Eala, there was another who had a completely opposite perspective. Additionally, the criticism started to get louder, more pointed, and harder to ignore as the story continued to dominate tennis social media. It all began with a widely shared thread from a well-known WTA fan account. Could we discuss how troublesome this whole Rune-Eala situation is? Does the viewpoint of a famous ATP player suddenly give Eala legitimacy in the eyes of the public? She's been working hard and succeeding for years, but because a man saw her, Now people are interested? This is precisely the issue with the way we report on women's tennis. A nerve was touched by the thread. It was retweeted thousands of times in a few hours, with journalists, past players, and tennis enthusiasts contributing their own viewpoints. Most people agreed that Rune's remarks appeared sincere, therefore the criticism wasn't aimed at his adoration per se. They contended that the issue was the excessive attention their remarks garnered in contrast to the prominence Alex Eala's real accomplishments had garnered. An article titled, "Alex Eala Doesn't Need Holger Rune's Approval," was written by a tennis journalist. The article detailed Alex Eala's achievements, including her Grand Slam junior title, her consistent ascent up the WTA rankings in spite of a lack of resources and assistance, and her role as a trailblazer for the tennis aspirations of an entire country. The article made the case that these accomplishments merited extensive publicity on their own. Rather, we are discussing her because her name was brought up by an ATP player. It's a tennis media issue, not a Holger Rune issue. The nature of the speculation itself was also criticized. The unsettling fact that people were effectively shipping to actual athletes who had never openly expressed romantic interest in one another was brought out by a number of Twitter users. These are not TV show characters. They are actual individuals. It's really strange and intrusive how some of you are handling things. Some of Rune's own admirers started to wonder if the attention was beneficial or detrimental to him. Holger's had a difficult few months with mixed outcomes and a couple on-court disputes. We are now discussing his affections for another player rather than his tennis. His team must be incensed that this is now the story. Tennis podcasts devoted whole shows to discussing the situation's ethics. A sports psychologist with expertise working with professional players was featured on one well-known program. Being a top player teaches you to be extremely cautious about what you say. Each statement is examined. Rune either wasn't considering the ramifications or felt strongly enough that he didn't care, as evidenced by the fact